This match of Australia versus Wales, which finished 25-29, a game that's Wales kicked off really well, and they showed some brilliant kind of scoreboard intent, trying to keep that score ticking over, didn't they?
Yeah, they didn't just limit themselves to box kicks, and they didn't just limit themselves to taking Australia on in the forwards. There was some enterprise shown there, mentioned by the commentators, at least the commentators we heard here in New Zealand. And certainly there was a bit of invention and willingness to attack from the Welsh.
Absolutely. And for me, one of the things that we saw early on, and a bit surprising, I mean, after 38 seconds, they got their first points on the board with a drop goal, showing that Wales really were, every single time they went down to that 22, they wanted points and they wanted to come away with points. But also what that means is when you got that you are doing drop goals, you're changing the shapes that the defence are looking at.
Yes.
The defence have got to think about something else. So this Australian defence had to think a lot in this game, and they didn't really figure that out until the second half, did they?
No, they didn't. And their susceptibility to cross-field kicks, at least the Welsh susceptibility to cross-field kicks was in evidence, and it was something that was tried by both teams. And this is what's interesting me at the moment, is that when teams get into the 22, they seem to think if they get a penalty and they're attacking in the 22, I don't know what the stats show, but they seem to be going for this crossfield kick. And maybe the stats show that's your highest percent success rate, that you can score a try from that, seeing as there's no risk of losing the ball because you get advantage. But yeah, they certainly, as the Welsh, they looked well coached, they looked well drilled, and they showed up, Australia especially, and we discussed this. Australia had two open side flankers to start this game.
Yep.
And their ball was getting horrifically slowed down.
Well, not only horrifically slowed down, here's a stat for you, which you haven't seen yet. Turnovers conceded, 17 by Australia, 17-9 by Wales. That is absolutely massive.
That's huge. Now, if you've got the two open-siders, you expect to win the turnover battle, at least in the numbers.
Yep.
So the fact that you've got two open-siders, and these are two world-class open-siders. These are not, these are two open-siders that probably would make the squad individually. They would make any other squad in the world.
Yep.
Probably they would make the squad, right? You might find Hooper might battle to make the Springboks team, maybe, but he probably would make the Springboks squad. And yet you're conceding so many turnovers, and yet your ball is being slowed down. And this really is an indictment, first of all, of the tight five of Australia.
Yep.
Right. So they were getting absolutely their clock cleaned, right? And that's why there was so much pressure on Guinea and on 10 Foley. Yeah. So the issue there is that Australia come back to the same story, is that they are let down in their pack. They've got a good backline. They've got a very good backline. And they made some very smart changes. So in other words, in the second half, what they did is
let's talk about the first half first. So the first half, Wales had that good start. They missed a penalty, missed a drop goal. So they were only 10 points up when they should have been perhaps a few more at that point. Australia came back, really nice open field try, again with that cross-field kick to Adam Ashley Cooper. And I think Wales weathered that pretty well, because one of the things about rugby is you're going to be on top and you need to get your points then. But when you're not on top, you need to just weather it and not give up too many. And Wales did really well there. Australia were making breaks, but Wales were making them knock on. And Australians weren't capitalising from their good play at that point. And then we had we then had the Gareth Davis show of how to intercept.
Yes.
Right? You were talking about his role in the defence.
Yeah, well, this was mentioned, and I give credit to Isa Nathewa in the studio in New Zealand, where he pointed out that Sean Edwards' pattern for defence is different to the normal one, or the most common one, where the number 9 scrum half halfback runs in what's called the boot. So he runs cover for a chip kick or a grubber, and cover for a potential break behind the defensive backline, Whereas in Edwards' system, the 9 is given the freedom to roam and to make reads. So he's given the freedom to shoot out of the line to go for intercepts, or to shoot out of the line to close attacking options down. And quite honestly, but for his hands, he would have had 2 intercepts. I'm not saying he necessarily would have beat
tries. He had
two
two intercepts in the first half, and then he butchered one in the second half as well.
Butcher one in the second half, and that one in the second half. I'm not saying he necessarily would have beaten Curtly Beale. Beale might have brought him down, but he had a possibility of a second intercept try. So if you are going to defend against Wales, you're going to attack against Wales in future games, the issue is you've got to make sure that you take care of that 9 and that you watch where he is, because he is going to shoot at some stage, right? So you need to vary your pattern, and and that's something, of course, other teams are going to look at quite closely.
Yeah, absolutely. That gave Wales an 8-23 lead. I mean, the other thing that happened in that first half was a real demonstration of how not to tackle by Dan Biggar, who put his head in front of Karevi to slow him down. It's something we've seen Lee Halfpenny do as well a lot, which is one of the things why Lee Halfpenny's had concussions. Dan Biggar did not come back from his HIA. Reece Patchell came on, played a large part of this game and played really well. You're impressed by his calmness, if not his tackle technique, because he got himself in some poor positions as well when tackling some of the bigger boys. But he had a good day with the boots and a good day running the show for Wales.
Yeah, Patchell, there's something about this kid, right? I don't know him well, but he's got something, right? And there, even in the height of the freneticism when they were on attack, there was this continual calmness that sort of pervaded his play. And that's something special, in that atmosphere with that crowd going berserk and shouting, screaming. You could see this is a thinking footballer, right? This is a guy who plays with brains, and I like him a lot. There's a lot to like about him. There's a lot to admire about Matt Tumua, who came off the bench for Australia as well in the second half.
Yeah, now this is something, a big difference between Ireland and Wales, actually, I just want to bring up, because obviously Ireland lost to Japan last night, but that was with Carberry and, I've gone blank of the other guy's name now, off the top of my head, but with Sexton missing. Here we are, Wales, down to their third choice fly half, and he's very good and calm. You look at compare that to Ireland, they're not in the same place. So that depth is something that's really good and strong about this Welsh squad.
Yes, that's the
now,
word.
that's what we're looking for. Now,
It's late. It's late here.
It is late here. Before we go on to the second half, though, let's deal with refereeing, because we've already had some comments in the chat about refereeing and Rowan Poits. Now, the TMO really injects himself into this game, picking out things that the ref and the assistants aren't going to see until you see replays and slow down. But yeah, the TMO had a bigger part in this game than perhaps we've seen in the other games so far in the Rugby World Cup.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of discussion around the Karevi sanction. It thankfully was just a penalty, but that penalty was 3 points.
Yes.
Right? And if you consider the fact that take those 3 points away, and at the end of the game, Australia are pushing for a penalty
To win
and not a try.
Yep.
Right? So, yes, however, this is what happened. Right? Now, let me step back a moment and say, part of the problem when dealing with this issue now that we have is the referees have muddied the water by double standards, right? And it's citing TMOs. We had this discussion. You told me earlier on this evening, calm down, John. It's not going to get you anywhere, right? When I expressed my frustration over the fact that the Joe Moody hit dropped shoulder into the back of Malcolm Marx's head and neck as he's sitting, not only wasn't penalized, wasn't carded, it wasn't even cited.
Yep.
It should be a red card, and it should also be a 6-week ban, entry point, right? Seeing what we've seen so far. And he has got no, please, don't argue here about he was dropping whatever. The point is, if you drop your elbow and you pull it in and you go in with your shoulder like this, which is exactly what he did, you are playing Russian roulette. Because if you make contact with the head, you should be gone, right? So the thing is, you should never be coming in like this. You should be coming in like this, right? To make contact here, but with your arm ready to wrap. So The problem that we have with this whole situation is that the referees and the citing officials and the system has muddied the water and created all this confusion. If we were to take that confusion away, World Rugby have focused on getting players to move away in any manner from the head, right? Which is an admirable aspiration, because all the studies have shown what these effects of these head knocks are long term, right? With chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
Easy for him to say.
Yeah, CTE, right? So this is what they're trying to get them away from. And if you look at it from that perspective, what Karevi does is he hits here and he rides up. And what they're trying to get players to do is make sure whatever you do, that you don't have the potential to go towards the head.
Yep.
Right? Now, we forget when the law was brought in that you can't take a player out in the air. Remember, there was no law before that. This is exactly what happened. Everybody went, that's not rugby. You can't, how can you say the guy's running and he can't stop himself and whatever. And they said, that is your problem.
Yeah, but basically the lesson now is, because we saw the red card in the Uruguay-Georgia game as well, where he went high. Basically, if you don't bend your knees to tackle, then you're opening yourself to
Drop your shoulder.
To
Bend your
get
knees.
this thing. So,
get your head out of the way. Drive with the right shoulder, with the hand coming through. Right tackle technique.
Yep. And
right.
So that's basically the lesson now. And from from an attacker's point of view, or ball carrier's point of view, is you can hand off.
Yes.
You can.
But you can't elbow.
You can brace, but you cannot remove. You can't move your arm away from your body to contact the opposition player. Basically, so that's now.
The lesson for Karevi there is obviously he's very strong, so he's pushing him away. But he was doing this. But the lesson for it is don't push up.
Yep.
Right. If you're going to push away, push down. Right. If you hit and you push away, push down, push the player away. It is the onus is on each player to avoid the opposition's neck and head.
Yep.
Right. And you know what? That's what we want mothers who are watching the game to get. We want them to think, rightly so, not deceive them, that when their kids go play on Saturday, that the person who tackles them or the person who runs into them with the ball has been drilled on the fact, stay away from their boy's head.
Yep.
Right?
So there you go. So that's basically what it is. Now, you have a choice, as do lots of people on Twitter in particular, and Reddit and other places. Basically, you can either go around searching for issues in the game and you'll find them and you can moan and complain about them, or you can actually enjoy watching rugby. That's your choice. This channel will try and enjoy watching rugby while explaining what's going on with referees. So that's our referee bit. The second half then, Wales came out and looked like they were going to do exactly the same thing. Drop goal straight after half time, and then the wheels fell off.
Well, the wheels fell off because shortly after that drop goal, they made some changes in the Australian, and Wales did not have the nous to respond to it. And here are two indictments on these teams and two big X's against their chances of winning this World Cup. Number one, we spoke about Australia has a tight five problem.
Yep.
And that's not going to go away with the squad.
Yep.
Right? Number two, Wales have a backline problem. Right? They have an ability to deal with fast thinking, fast moving, fast adapting backlines. Right? And if they battle so much with the change of Matt Tumua coming on, and suddenly, instead of sitting back, right, like our previous 10 again, whose name slips my mind, help me.
Or bigger, Anscombe?
No, the Australian.
Foley.
Foley. I don't know why. I always forget that guy's name. I should maybe I should think of him as Eddie Murphy, Axel Foley. So, in fact, I think that's his nickname in the Australian team, Axel.
Probably.
Right? So, he was taking the ball very deep, and now suddenly Tumua was running onto the ball and giving and attacking that line and offloading at the line, and suddenly he solved the problem that the Australian pack had, which is that they were constantly playing behind and they weren't forceful enough to handle the situation of being behind the advantage line. And he completely changed the game, right? And I want to give some credit to Tumua. I've long admired him as a rugby player. That is a serious athlete, right? So I think that personally, to me, if I was looking at Australian rugby going forward, he would be the player that I would select at 10, right? And I would say, we are going to aim for the next World Cup with him at 10, and we're going to make him a project, right? Because he brings incredible defensive efficiency. You don't have to go hide him out wide like they do Moanga and the All Blacks, or at the back like they do if Kurtley Beale is playing at 10. Yep. You can put him there, and you can possibly think of bringing O'Connor inside, or at least you don't have to worry about any defensive frailty size-wise with O'Connor because he's so good. So I think it's a midfield that would be Tumua, Karevi, and O'Connor going forward, working together. If I was the Australians, I would do everything I can after 2 years of wherever Karevi is playing, of trying to get the three of them in the same Super Rugby franchise and then unleash them, right? But he made the world of difference.
He did. And then he goes forward, gets front foot ball. The forwards manage to wrap around and take the ball on the run, rather than having to run back and then come and have slow static ball. They start offloading off the ground as well. So, and that quick ball led to Dame Howlett-Petty's score, and then also onto Hooper's score as well. And suddenly, 14 points or 2 tries. I think they were both converted. And suddenly, it's 22-26, and Australia are back in this game because they're getting forwards, they're getting quick ball, and they're not allowing Wales to slow down the ball, which they had been doing for the 46 minutes or so before that. Which was, but then Australia didn't seem to be able to continue with that. They all got a bit scrappy then towards the enemy. Both sides replaced lots of players, which obviously isn't. Which is disruptive, but yeah, it seemed that Australia managed to do it for about 20 minutes, and then they seemed to kind of lose, not seem to be able to sort of keep it going, unfortunately.
Yeah, and they, let's give some credit. They started scrumming the Welsh.
Yep.
Right, which was surprising, but again, they just. In that kind of situation that Australia were in, where they scored a try and then scored another try, right? In that kind of situation that they were in, if the All Blacks are in that situation, you are in deep trouble, right? Because they're just going to put their neck on you and just finish you. Their foot on your neck and finish you.
The game's gone.
Yep. The game, they are coming for you, and there's no turning back, right? But it just. And look, I'm going to say this, and Australians not going to like it, but Australia are not a good team, right? And I've been trying to say this for a couple of years now. They are crafty, they are clever, and as much as he irritates the living daylights out of me, Checker is a astute coach. So they've been doing this for 20 years nearly, of when they're under pressure in the scrums, surprise, surprise, the scrum collapses, right, on their own ball. They have all sorts of cunning strategies to employ. They make up for their deficiencies in other ways, but they're not a top team, right? No. And because their tight five is an issue, right? Yep. And what you saw with Wales is good on defense. But when you get a top backline coming at them, they're in trouble, right? Because they do not have a top backline to reply.
Now, good on defence. These numbers are a bit kind of crazy. Australia tried to make 95 tackles, made 80. Wales tried to make 183 tackles, made 153. 183 tackles, made 150 tackles. That's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work. But let's just also look how many they missed. 30 tackles.
Yes,
that is a huge number to miss in a Test match.
And those misses were Jonathan Davis and Hadley Parkes for 10 of them. So your centres, 2 players who are considered very good defensive backs. They were both.
Australia's got a good backline.
Yep.
Right. Australia's got a good backline. They know what they're doing. James O'Connor seems to have really turned his life around so far as maturity is concerned. He's a skilled footballer. He was always a skilled footballer. Right. Samu Karevi is absolutely world class. Right. There's a reason why I call Australia Fiji A. Right. Karevi also would make any squad in the world, right? And he probably would start for most teams in the world.
Yep.
Karevi is special, special, special. What they don't have, the only thing that I would say that, two things that Australia don't have. They don't have blinding pace out wide. Korobeti, he's quick and he's a very good player, but they don't have Cheslin Colby pace out wide. They don't have absolute flying wingers, right? They don't have Severis type place out wide. And they don't have Folau.
No. They do have, though, a guy who played pretty well. I mean, Dane Petty had a decent game.
He played well. He had a decent game.
Yeah.
But I'm saying he's a good player, but he's not Folau.
He's not. He's a good footy. He's a good footy player now, and he's got all-round skills. And hence, but yeah.
But even if they had those wings, and even if they had Folau, it still doesn't fix their tight five problem.
Yep. So yeah, Wales managed to see it out in the end. Wales only made 2 trips into the Australian 22 in the second half. That's an amazing amount of dominance by Australia, and they still couldn't turn this round.
And they turned those 2 trips into 6 points.
6 points. Yep.
2 a drop goal and a penalty, and that because they lost that second half 14-6 to Australia. But those 6 points were critical in winning the game.
So actually more than that, actually, because they also got a penalty, so 17-6. I think it was
17-6.
Only 18% territory for Wales in that second half, 24% possession. The fact they managed to salvage a win out of this is impressive from that point of view. But they shouldn't be putting themselves under that pressure. They should be getting more of the ball and getting themselves out. They're not going to survive under that much pressure against some of the other top teams that they're going to come across. Now, where does this leave these 2 teams?
Sure. This is where it gets interesting.
It's where it gets interesting. So, yes. So, Wales, by winning this game, probably will top the group, and Australia will probably come second, let's be honest, because Fiji have lost to Uruguay, and Uruguay have already lost to these things. You can't see Fiji, Uruguay, I've gone blank.
Georgia.
Getting the points to get second or place. Those 3 are all playing for that third place, and automatic qualification for France. So if Wales are going to win this one, and Australia are going to come second. So Wales will probably look at meeting the second place out of the England, France, Argentina pool. So probably France or Argentina, and then come up against on the same side as South Africa. Quite who's going to come first and second out of Pool A is an absolute guesswork at the moment after Japan's win, because Ireland, Japan, and Scotland and even Samoa could finish in any order whatsoever.
Yes.
So who knows there? On the other side of the table, Australia will face the winner of England, France, Argentina. So probably England, and then if they get through that, New Zealand. So this puts Australia on the side of New Zealand and Wales on the side of South Africa. Essentially, is what we know from this going forwards. The Pool A, as I said, is totally up in the air at the moment. Pool C with England, France, and Argentina, we're still waiting. for some of those, for most of those big games to happen. But the other 2 pools now, we pretty much know who the teams are that are going to come out of that from either side. If that's the best, some of the comments Sean was making early in this one was about sort of the Northern Hemisphere skills, because the Welsh skills let them down in that first half. In that first
they had opportunities they butchered.
Yeah,
they had opportunities they butchered where they couldn't pass to the left properly. Long floating passes where they couldn't, they're losing momentum. I think Hadley Parkes has obviously made a difference to them, but there's somebody whose basic skills weren't developed in the Northern Hemisphere, right?
Yep.
So what you saw tonight was an exciting game, but these are not top teams.
Yes, I don't think they're not going to worry the All Blacks or the Springboks with that performance.
Or England, to be honest.
We're going to need to see more out of these both of these teams.
Look, the jury is still out in England because they haven't had an out-and-out game yet, right?
Correct. Yep.
So, but at the moment, this win by Japan during the week, what it has so completely thrown the whole system here is if you are a New Zealand fan, Japan did no favours.
No.
To Ireland, at least to the All Blacks, because what the All Blacks are now probably facing, and again, this is all conjecture, is the All Blacks are probably facing a quarterfinal against Ireland, followed by a semi-final against England, followed by the final, right?
Yep.
And you would project them to get through the final because they're the best team that we've seen so far, right?
But that's a tough route.
That is a tough route. And when I say tough route, is we're not saying that we don't expect them to win. We would expect them to win both those games. But the point is, what is going to be the result of having to play those two games followed by a final? What's the effect on the squad, injuries, wear and tear? You're probably going to try and bring Retallick back for the quarterfinal. Those are going to be bruising encounters. Whereas, on the other side of the draw, South Africa, who probably now all should finish second to the All Blacks, are now going to sit on the side of the draw where they're probably going to face either Japan or Scotland or Samoa in the quarterfinal, right? Samoa, by the way, Samoa could still get through. Absolutely. They've got one win.
Samoa can still top the group.
Yeah, they've got 1 win, 0 losses. Samoa could top the group. But South Africa are probably going to face one of those three, followed by
Wales.
So South Africa could face Scotland, Wales, and then the final. So that side of the draw has suddenly become, at least for wear and tear wise, right? You still got to win them.
Yep.
But from a wear and tear perspective, you would much rather go, and I'm sorry, Welsh and Scottish fans, but the absolute bruising physicality of those games, Scotland or Japan, followed by Wales into a final, is nothing like Ireland, England, and then into a final. You know, so that side of the draw is going to require much less physically from the.
It's
players.
flipped what we were supposed to have at one point was 3 of the top 4 teams in the world on one side of the draw and New Zealand on the other side. That's just suddenly been flipped
It's
by
been
Japan.
flipped completely the other way around now.
Now, there was a question in the chat about why was Eddie Jones there. Eddie Jones was there because he's facing one of these two teams in the quarterfinal, if he gets through. Right?
That's the projected, yeah.
No, either way.
Either way.
It doesn't matter whether they come first or second in the group. England will face either Wales or Australia in the quarterfinals. And that's why Eddie Jones was there.
And here's the thing. There are significant weaknesses in both these teams. Teams like the All Blacks, because that's really what we need to talk about, right? If you're going to win the World Cup, unless somebody does you a major favor, you're probably going to have to beat the All Blacks to win this World Cup. You get all the way through, right? I mean, Australia are probably going to have to beat France, right? Then the Springboks.
Hang on, Australia, we're going to probably,
They're going to come second. Yeah, so
Australia would have to be England, then New Zealand to get to the final.
Yeah. So sorry, that's right. So Australia's. I mean, what kind of odds are you going to get that Australia could beat England first and then play New Zealand and beat them and then have enough wherewithal in that squad to then play South Africa, right? When they don't have absolute world class tight 5.
Yep.
So all the teams that take them on from now on know you go at their tight 5, right? Teams with the skill and the pack to do that go. South Africa is not going to be scared of Australia. New Zealand's not going to be scared of Australia. England is not going to be scared of Australia. They're just going to smash them up front, right?
Yep.
Then, and by the way, a lot of credit due to the Wallabies scrum coach. He's done some good work there. So they're a good scrumming team, right? But they've got glaring weaknesses in their tight 5.
They're an okay scrumming team.
Yes, they're an okay scrumming team. They're not weak like they used to be.
Yes.
Right? That's a good point. And then Wales. Wales can be dealt with if you've got a really good pack, which England does, and the Wallabies do. No, England does, All Blacks do, and the Springboks do. Right? And you can contain the Welsh pack, and then unloose your back line on them. Wales are in trouble. Right? The problem is that England don't really have those skills.
Yeah, I think that Parks and Jonathan Davis didn't have their best games tonight.
No, they didn't.
I think they can play a lot better than that.
Yeah.
I'm amazed they missed so many tackles, but yeah. But anyway, it's going to be. We will have John back on probably Tuesday night for Hash Rugby Chat. We'll be talking about how all of this kind of stuff's together. This was just a post-match review because, as I say, it's late. we need to get to bed. So thank you, everybody, for being on here. Don't forget to click the link and become a supporter of the channel. We'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow night with Steve and Harris to talk about the United Cup. I'll be back on Tuesday night with Hash Rugby Chat to talk about the Rugby World Cup, and back on Wednesday night for the All Blacks edition to preview the All Blacks game that is on Wednesday night. So all fun and games coming up.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Cheers, guys.
Bye. How do we stop this thing?